screen.
Okay, let's start once more. Hi, Caroline, how are you doing?
I'm doing really nice
Am
and
I
really
still
fine.
frozen?
You're still frozen.
Oh, so it's frozen too. Anyway, so well, if it works, as long as it works, I can see you, and I can
Yeah,
see.
but that's perfect then.
Okay, if it totally breaks
Oh,
down, please.
yes. Now you started
Oh,
moving again.
no idea what will appear on the video that we're recording, but we'll see. Maybe I think I think Microsoft Teams. We're now in Teams, so this is a new environment for me to record in. But I think it takes videos from both sides, so it doesn't. It's not affected by the
No,
Wi-Fi.
I don't think so. Let's just see what it does. It's the influence of technology on our conversation.
It is. It is. All right. So great that you have a short moment of time because I heard that you are very busy at the moment with education and projects. So I will not take too much time of you. We'll talk for about 20 minutes. And
Perfect.
because people have told me that students cannot pay attention for longer than 20 minutes to something.
Oh, is that the
I
case?
don't know.
I have no clue.
But I think it's good to not have a too long.
Ah, true.
Um, so as I said, we're in this transdisciplinary working and creative intelligence program, and students are thinking about what happens if you bring a lot of different people together from
Hmm.
various backgrounds, different life histories, different knowledge base, um, different disciplines, and then you have to work on complex challenges together.
Yep.
And the key is somewhere in bringing all this knowledge together, right? But that's a difficult task because people don't understand each other and so on. And so you've actually done a lot of work on that, on and especially also on thinking about how to facilitate
Yeah.
those kinds of processes with interventions, design interventions. So yeah, that's what I really would like to hear your thoughts about. Maybe you can say in as a start, what is your own experience with that kind of stuff? Like you've obviously also been in group meetings with people from various different backgrounds.
Yeah.
What is the main barrier, or what always goes wrong, or what is the
It
key to success there,
Jesus,
according to
what goes wrong and what the key to success is are two different
you?
things.
Well, what
But
goes
when
wrong is
you
maybe easy.
started, I immediately had to think of an anecdote. We were trying to set up a new funding program, and there were doctors there. There were people from a medical background. There were people from, I think, legal, engineers. There was a lot of disciplines there, and I have an engineering slash design background, but I see myself more at the cross section of design and philosophy. So I was a bit the weird one in the group, in my opinion, at least. And the meeting was already going on for half an hour, I think even an hour, explaining what we would do. And I was just sitting there and I didn't understand a thing of what they wanted to do. And
Exactly.
then at some point I thought, okay, do I just pretend that I understand what they say, or will I just say, sorry, guys, you lost me already after the first few sentences? So at some point I thought, yeah, but because it was an entire day from the morning till the evening, I thought, yeah, I'm not going to bear with this if it's an entire day. So I raised my hand and said, my apologies. I have no clue what you're trying to do. I have no clue what you're talking about. It's not that the words were difficult. It's just I had no clue what they were saying. And then at that point, almost everyone said, oh yeah, by the way, that goes for me too. I have no clue what we're trying to say.
Exactly.
And then there were only two people around the table, approximately, that said, "Oh, oh." So they were apparently the only ones that did get what,
Yeah.
and that was just because they came from a certain
Yeah.
explaining in their language what they wanted to do, and the rest was completely lost. So for me, that's always an ideal anecdote. On the one hand, that is very difficult to understand each other, even if you understand the language or
Yeah.
you grasp what the language as such is, but you
Yeah.
have no clue
It's
what it
English
means.
or Dutch. You know the words.
Yeah, the words were all fine, but also apparently that we are so polite that no one dares to say that they have no clue what's being said.
Yeah.
So, and that I often noticed that it's not only about not understanding each other, but also not even daring to step in and intervene and say, how can we do this in another way so that we can understand each other?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So the basic social norms actually get in the way.
Yep.
Like
And I think it's not only the basic social norms, but it's also the way the situation was organized. So we're all sitting in a certain way, everyone with their laptop in front of their face. And so it's, for me, I'm always intrigued by the practice of things. So I think that the practice that everyone has, and including then these social norms that are part of a practice, I would say, that kind of prohibit that we talk in a certain way or can engage. So
yeah,
for me, my research, I'm really intrigued to figure out how can you organize the situation differently? How can you design mediators so that you actually open up this sometimes uncomfortableness or not understanding the different disciplines, and from there you facilitate basically that people find new ways of talking to each other.
yeah, exactly. So I think we should go into that, into the mediators, but maybe one step back. Can you say a little bit more about what you mean by practice? Because that is also a common word. It's just an English word, but of course
Yeah,
it has a whole context too, right? In the way
yeah.
you think
Yeah,
about it.
so for me, a practice is a way of that certain people work together, but it also includes in their way of dealing and working together and in acting together. They have a certain idea of what they are doing. They have some certain norms underlying of what they consider to be appropriate or not, given what they do. So there is a normative perspective.
Yeah,
It also says something of how they do stuff. Um, and it's also related to the people that are in there, the arrange. So it's an arrangement also of tools, of people,
yeah,
of methods, of ways of working, of the environment, of the nature. I mean, it's very
yeah,
broad, but it's basically is an agreement in a way of working, and not always explicit, but
exactly. Yeah,
in the way of working that you do things, and that clusters certain people so that you can say, yeah, this is a kind of practice. So
yeah,
if look at design and the way that I'm doing now, I'm setting up a community and we're all interested in what we now labeled as transforming practices. We really also have our own practice of doing it, and that means that we meet in a certain way, we discuss in a certain way, we
yeah.
value certain things.
And this you discuss very explicitly, while often in the rest of everyday life and in all kinds of professions, the practice is often a bit implicit, right? It's not people. It's there.
Yeah.
People who are inside of it know, but they don't know. It's not that they follow the rule book. There is a rule book often, and they
Yeah,
sort of
but you
follow it
sometimes
half.
also bump into a rule book that you're not aware of. I once, when I was a professor a few years after, I was working in my painting clothes. I mean, to paint the walls.
Yeah,
So I was really in trashy clothes.
yeah,
But because I wanted to paint something, I mean, long story, since we didn't have enough money to have professional painters, and we thought, oh, you know what, we can do it ourselves. But the etiquette and the practice of professorship, some people said, yeah, but that's not appropriate for a practice of a professor to paint the walls. I mean, so you're mixing up
yeah,
practices. And for me, it was mind blowing actually, and an eye opener. I thought, okay, so I really do not get all the details of what this practice then apparently
yeah.
entails.
And now maybe to move on then, because you find out what the rules are by doing it, right? At some point you discover by bumping into, but you also want to transform
Yeah.
practices. So that's not just accepting.
Now, so for me, the fun is of stepping into practices and working with that practice and trying to figure out what they do, how they do it, discuss it with them, but also opening it up by
Yeah,
showing other means and other ways of doing it. So, for instance, I mean, we do a lot nowadays with a lot of bigger organizations, Rijkswaterstaat, Impulse, Philips Design, province, city of Eindhoven. But for instance, a project that we did several years ago, and you were also involved in that one, where we developed exchanging perspectives. Philemon Jasma, the PhD, working on that. At that point of time, she developed this in order to try to see if the practice that is currently there between the civil servants and the city,
Yeah.
and how they communicate with citizens, they have certain ways of doing that, but that doesn't per definition support in understanding each other's perspectives. So that's why we developed a whole system called exchanging perspectives, to say like, oh, but you could also organize this in a different way, so that you really would have another way of dealing with your city and dealing with the citizens, from either depending on from which side you come.
Can you say more about that system? I will put a picture also on the web for the students, because I mean, or I will paste it in the video
Just
or
give
whatever.
me
I mean,
one
I'm not so
sec,
fancy.
just to show it right now.
Oh yeah! Oh great! Oh wow! You are so sophisticated.
Because
Can you explain?
It's easier if I explain if you see a picture.
Yeah. What do we see?
So what you see here, and this is just one of the things that we have done, but you see with the notebook on a bit right to the middle, you see Philemon, who is making notes while walking in between the tables.
Yeah.
But the tables are actually a set of interactive tables where you see tokens on top. You see a sensing system in the tables that in the end transport all this information to a big screen on the right. But the whole point is that these different people around the table, they have a discussion on a certain topic that's on a question in the middle of the table.
Yeah.
And by moving the tokens around, but also by giving meaning together to the tokens that are on the table, what they mean for them, they can make a landscape of what they find more important or less important given the question that's on the table. So they can move things inside to indicate it's more important, and move it more to the outside to indicate it's less important. But the whole point for us is the little round table means that you're standing fairly close to each other. So this is not a COVID-19 setup.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, because psychologically, there was a lot of research that if you come close to each other, you have a different relationship to people than if you're at a distance or if you don't even see them. If people become more abstract, you could say, you can create a different bond. So the whole point is here is if you stand close together and you discuss it, but you also have your traces of the discussion on the table, so you physicalize the conversation, then it becomes way more easier to kind of find mutual ground. And it's not for us. I mean, in the Netherlands, we are really good at the poll model, consensus model, if you would say it in English. The thing is, what I'm very much intrigued what Richard Sennett, a sociologist, always bring forward. There's a difference between dialectic and dialogic.
Okay.
He says the one is way more focusing on bringing consensus. So having all the opinions there, but in order to kind of come up with one joint opinion. Dutch are really good at that. I think more countries, by the way, are really good at that. And that's what we trained at. The dialogic one is really a conversation where you try to perceive the different perspectives from different sides, but it's not so that I change you, but it's more to get a better understanding of these different perspectives.
Yes.
And for me, that is really valuable. So as Senna said, instead of playing with a big symphony orchestra where you try to make one that is musical instrument that is really harmonious, it's more like playing jazz. So you react to each other, you respond to each other, but you have your different roles in there, which you create something beautiful together. But at the one point, the piano might have more influence, the piano player, and at another point, the bass player has more of a tune.
Yeah.
So see it as the jazz of communication in the city on difficult topics.
And what I find very intriguing about this, also in relation to some of the other discussions or interviews that I've had, is you you really give a very important place to the physical, to the body and the tangible object. That's
Yeah.
also an interest of mine, of course. Can you say a little bit more about why focus on that? I mean, for one thing, I know because I was there and I saw that Philemon had a lot of work making these actual
Yeah.
tables. So if you could do it with just simple tables and just a bit of talking, and rules for having the conversation, right?
That would be way
What is the
easier.
value of the physical things?
By the
There?
way, it would not only be easier, it'd be way cheaper also because the tables were quite expensive.
I can
So,
imagine. I can imagine.
so in a sense, it's really clever and easy to do it to do it in a simple way by talking. The thing is, I mean, first of all, we're designers, so we think in stuff.
Yeah.
To say it like that, we think in things. The other
But
thing
it
is
has a
what,
value, right? It has a
Hmm?
value, and
Yeah.
it has
So the
a
point is
particular
that
value that.
the
Yeah.
point is that if you go also more into theory of what things can do, they can afford certain possibilities. So for you to interact, that makes meaning for you. So I'm coming more from a philosophical background, our work that is really saying instead of having the idea that knowledge is all in your brain and it's basically disconnected from your body and your environment, we and the we is also including you, I would say, are coming way more from a perspective where you focus on embodied cognition, so that cognition is not simply only here, but it's basically cognition is in your relationship with the world.
Yes.
And it's also from a physical perspective that meaning is created in interaction. It's not simply there. You create the meaning while interacting. So,
Yes.
for instance, if you have a skateboarder, I actually can't skate. I did it when I was young, and I noticed already quite soon after half a year that that was not really my thing. But people, I always am fascinated by skateboarders and how they train themselves, because initially everyone has to learn basically to stand on the skateboard, but slowly but certainly you learn more. And because your skill is growing, you also see more opportunities in the environment that you can
Yes.
jump onto. So there is this always this relationship between what your skills are and the way that you interact in the world and what you see as possibilities.
Yes. Exactly. So I could imagine that in looking at the photo, these objects, they afford grabbing
Yeah.
and putting them in different positions, and then somebody else may also want to do that or just did that with the same object, and so yeah, immediately you have a kind of relation because you're both doing stuff with these things, right? You maybe
Yeah,
somebody thinks, oh, that was my thing, or
and
no,
it's
it should
also
go here.
nice because by having it in the middle, or the possibility to shift it to the middle, it really facilitates the discussion. Should it stand here?
Yes.
Now, what you normally would not have if you give me your point of view and I give you my point of view, they stay two points of view that
Yes.
have no relation, that they might have a relationship in what we say, but that's it. And I can question your
Yes.
relationship, or I can question your discipline, but often it even stays under the table that you even, it stays very implicit of why you say things. This one pushes you way more into depth of the conversation, but why do you actually position it there? Because we have to agree upon the space that is there.
Yes.
So, and also there was someone at some point that was really dissatisfied with one of the tokens that it was on the table. He actually didn't want it there. So he tucked it in his jacket, and with the idea almost like, if you can't see it, it's not there. Of course, it didn't work because people also saw that one of the people around the table saw he tucked it away.
Yeah.
But that means that you immediately also get a discussion like, yeah, is this relevant or not? Also, standing close to each other, I noticed it myself. I was because I did also one of the sessions myself as a participant. I was on the opposite of a political spectrum on a certain topic that we discussed. And normally, I think if I read the newspaper and I see things on the opposite spectrum, I often have the first instance say, oh, I really do not agree. But that is not really helpful if I only think that. And what I noticed by standing next to him, I saw the person, I saw what he said, I saw how he said it, and we really felt from each other like, oh shit, we're on the opposite of the spectrum. But because we were so close, we couldn't dive. So we
No, you had
really
to do
felt
something
we
about
had
it.
to be respectful.
Yes.
We had to understand why he was saying it. And through moving the objects and being so close to each other, I really understood why he was saying it from his perspective, and he understood why I was saying it from my perspective. And that didn't mean that we suddenly shifted in our political favor
Mhm.
or color, but we got way more understanding why it makes sense from different perspective. And I think that is, for me, on a societal level, something that we really need in the current society, that we have the respect and the ways of engaging with each other and understanding the different disciplines, and really feeling that the complexity that we're dealing with has different perspectives and viewpoints and
Yes.
lenses, and one is not per definition better than the other. They're just different things that you have to align.
Yeah, and it's the saddest thing that
By the way, shall I
like,
unshare again a bit?
oh yeah, sure. I think, don't you think it's the saddest thing that technology, that we both work with ways of using technology for the better, right? So to use it to support what you were just saying, how to really have people dig out their mutual perspectives and understand each other better, and without with each respecting the position of the other, and so on and so forth. At this moment, technology seems to be like the big dominant technologies like social media, and so seem to be
Uh,
doing exactly the opposite. No, they're like creating these
Yeah,
echo chambers.
yes and no. So the algorithms, unfortunately, I would say at this point, are really pushing us apart. So the on the other hand, that technology also makes that I see something of the other world, and I can be connected to people on the other side of the world. And so
Yeah.
I would say that technology non is not bad or good. But it's also not neutral. So it's always has a role. And
Yeah.
I think for me as a designer and at a technical university, I feel it our obligation to figure out what the ethical consequences are, and then play with that. Because for me now, most people are not aware, especially because all these algorithms are very deep into the software. You're not aware of the consequences. So you might be in a blob, not even knowing and realizing that you're a blob, and you just get all your information, and it feels really nice and well, and it's confirming of what you say every time.
Well, that's the point, right? Yeah.
But yeah, the whole point for us, basically, what I say, I personally believe more in a world that pushes us towards responsibility, to respect, and also to take care of each other and the world. So I might have slightly different values in maybe than some of the other people at this point, really believing in certain types of technology. But technology it has morality, so that we definitely have to work with and to be aware of, and again to discuss. So you might even use the tables to discuss these different
To
perspectives.
to discuss exactly that. Yeah. So that's the yeah. I was quite addicted to Twitter the last few years. Became worse and
Ah,
worse, and now I really stopped.
and
And
how
now I
did you
start.
feel?
Well, I really do realize now that it's a certain world that you step into,
Oh,
and it drags you into it, and certain things start to become normal that I actually don't find normal at all if I really go back to my own basis.
yeah,
So now when I just walk outside again and I talk with real actual people because I have so much time now, uh, I do see that it's very toxic, right? But
yeah,
but even that word toxic, it comes from Twitter, you know. So all these memes, all these terms, you start to talk
yeah.
in a
And
certain
it's really
language.
it's really funny. I was we are not, well, we can go to the university at this point. So I'm always a bit biased if it's necessary work or if it's just me wanting to see other people, or so how is.
Yes.
How urgent is it to go for me? But I think also in education, sometimes it's nice to see each other.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yesterday I was biking, and I had my headphones up and my music, and at one point, and I had the radio, the news, and at some point I was listening to that, and I thought, oh shit, I almost missed the beautiful sun going through the trees.
Yeah.
And and the day before I was also biking, really liked it, but there I really did it to get in touch with nature,
Yeah.
and yesterday I did it to move to the
Yeah.
university. And then I realized suddenly that when I did it for moving to the university, I suddenly thought, yeah, but now I'm on the bike, I can listen to the news, and I can do all kind of other stuff because it's just transport.
Yeah.
Which was stupid because there was still a beautiful sun out there, and I felt kind of disconnected from my environment because it became just a path to go through.
Yeah.
And then I just clicked in another mode. I turned off. I just put a nice music on, just as a background,
Yeah.
kind of to enhance the. And I really enjoyed biking. So, but it also has to do with what you're doing, what you like to do. And I'm not saying the one is better than the other. Definitely not. But you sometimes can just be dragged into something without even realizing.
Yeah, but and you can also then decide. I mean, it's sometimes good to, not saying it's bad, but just to make a conscious choice of what you do,
Yeah.
or change it or intervene.
Yeah.
So maybe as a final question, because I think it's also
Yeah. I have
time
no
to.
clue, by the way, if talking about multidisciplinarity, etc. Because I'm now kind of
Oh well, but I
maybe
think
got a
it's
bit
very
off track.
fascinating. No, this is all fascinating what we've been talking about. So this is all perfectly fine. Maybe just as a final, because yeah, you teach design students and you have a lot of experience with that. Our students have to design a workshop
Hmm.
with the materials as well. So for our course, it's mainly about the materials, the things, the setting, the like.
Yeah.
Is it going to be 20 of these tables? Probably not in the time given. But could you give them one piece of advice on how to do that? So how
Ah.
to go about designing that? Where would you
Oh, for
start?
me, the key thing is start by doing it yourself. So even if you don't have that material, that much idea yet, prototype in the situation that you can have. So stand there, act with whatever is around, and try to imagine, not imagine, try to feel what it does to you.
Yes.
So that's what we always say. You have a first person perspective coming from you and your own experience, or a third person perspective, kind of objectify and it's sometimes nice to objectify things and reflect and see the overall picture. But I think we push our students way too much out of their first person perspective. And if you do that, and the other advice would be iterate fast. So use scrap material, try it out. And also, what's the difference with talking to you or to me or to a fellow student? I mean, you started in the beginning saying there are different disciplines. That means that everyone probably has a different take on what is convenient or not. So I experimented a lot with almost ridiculous kind of playful and settings and
Yeah.
environments, but also very serious one. I've been sitting on the ground, I've been standing, I've been lying. I mean, you can
Yeah.
do it in all kind of new forms. So be creative, but also see what the pros and cons are of these different things by doing it and asking people what they feel about it. And if it's
I
online,
yeah.
again, it's different because we are now mediated through this one.
Yeah.
So also, but there's still a lot of possibilities here. I could really kind of play with you. Oh, we did it in the past. I could play play with you also from a digital perspective. So, but just be creative with all the possibilities that you have,
Well,
and try
that
it out
sounds great.
yourself.
Yeah, try it out. I think that's a good advice because we have this tendency to stay behind the screen and sit around the table and keep
Yeah, but
talking
also to
instead of.
only again
Yeah.
think. So
Yes.
maybe think that that cognition is embodied and not simply that you will figure it out by only thinking about it. You will figure it out by doing, and you create the meaning in interaction.
Exactly.
So that would be
So
the advice.
well, thanks very much, Caroline. I realize now that I completely forgot to ask you to introduce yourself because I know you already for such a long time. So we were just chatting as we always do. Can you maybe introduce yourself? So we and I will paste that at the beginning of the video.
Oh, I
So
would say, can I extroduce myself then instead
oh,
of
that's also
introduce myself?
let's just do that. You're
Because then it's a
extroducing.
farewell. You have been talking too.
Yeah, you have been talking to.
Yeah,
So who
Caroline
are you
Hummels.
anyway?
Yeah, Caroline. I'm a professor. Hummels. I'm a professor at industrial design at the Eindhoven University of Technology. I'm working in the group called Systemic Change. So we're really intrigued by the systemic challenges that we have, but also what we can do to influence, to have at least to address some certain issues within that perspective. And within that, we're focusing on transformative practices, as I explained, basically a bit, to really see how to do that. And we come there from a cross section, I would say, of engineering and design, and on the other hand, philosophy, a bit of anthropology. So we really try to build this field of design philosophy correspondence, which in a sense is again a correspondence between different disciplines. So
It is.
which fits again beautifully in the topic that you're working with.
Fascinating, and thanks for this very interesting and inspiring talk. And
Yeah, it was nice to have and to do this, and I wish everyone actually a pleasant time, because I think learning should be something that you do for yourself to grow and to enjoy it, and you don't do it for Jelle. So that's another advice. Don't give a shit about him. It's really about that you learn for yourself, and he is just
all right, we have to stop
doing that.
No, I agree. Thanks
Oh
so
well.
much, Caroline.
Yes. All
Okay,
right.
see you
Bye
later.
bye.
Bye bye.